Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. Today we're going to break down Manchester City's impressive 2-0 win against Manchester United to put Pep Guardiola's side back at the top of the Premier League table. We're going to look at why Manchester United approached the game in a 3-5-2, how they looked to shut down Manchester City, how Manchester City were able to overcome that shape in the first half before we get to the second half, and see why Leroy Sane's introduction was crucial. However, don't forget to give our video a thumbs up if you do enjoy it. The bell below does give you daily notifications regarding our organic, unfiltered soccer/footy analysis. We look at Manchester United, like I said, 3-5-2, Lingard and Rashford up front, out in the wing-back roles, Luke Shaw and Ashley Young, and in midfield they're with Pereira, Fred, and Paul Pogba. Then we look to Manchester City, a bit of a system change. They did look like more of a 4-2-1-3 with Bernardo, Silva, Raheem Sterling, and Sergio Aguero ahead of David Silva, and in midfield protecting the back four, Fernandinho, and they went with Ilkay Gundogan. So now let's get to the first half. See how Manchester United looked to approach the game, how they were trying to stifle City, and where they were able to create their attacking opportunities. So when we break down Manchester United against Manchester City, first let's start with Manchester United. We kind of knew how they were going to approach the game given the shape. 3-5-2 without the ball, they move into a 5-3-2. What they necessarily want is Marcus Rashford and Jesse Lingard to make runs in between the center backs and in between the full backs into those channels to get on the ball and use their pace specifically to probably run into space behind the full backs. But if they could get 1v1s against Vincent Kompany, who has struggled to defend in 1v1 situations and has a tendency to jump forward and make rash challenges, that would obviously be a plus for United. However, United's chances did come mostly on the counterattack, and we'll get to that in a bit, but we have to talk about their shape because City struggled in the opening period, more so the opening 10 to 15 minutes of that first half, and it's because their passing was very poor. But United's shape wasn't necessarily bad. They did have some breakdowns throughout, but the grand scheme of what Solskjaer kind of wanted them to do did kind of make sense here. Because when you look at it, you have the 5-3-2 without the ball, you have the midfield shuttlers in Pereira, in Paul Pogba. They are responsible to shift out into the fullbacks when the ball is shifted out to that specific flank. So if the ball is played to Kyle Walker, Paul Pogba would come across, and then you would shift over in that regard. And on the other flank, Andreas Pereira should be stepping to Zinchenko. There were some issues here. We'll get to that right now. One would be, obviously, now you have the front two stepping out to the center backs, and you have Fernandinho dropping off a bit deeper. City were trying to make it a 3v2. Anyhow, the ball goes to Walker. What you have now is you have Pogba, who should be on Gundogan, stepping out and pushing to Kyle Walker. When he pushes out there, now you have Gundogan in this space right now. Obviously, you want Fred to step into that space, but what ends up happening here is that if Fred steps into that space, then you have David Silva free to float and get the ball between the lines, and we'll get to their battle specifically in a bit as well. So they started doing that, but initially, as the game wore on, what ended up happening was as Gundogan kind of pushed forward in that scheme, we would see Lindelof step forward to Gundogan to press him out of the game to ensure that he wasn't a passing option. On the flip side, that is where City kind of got more of an advantage, but it also didn't really make sense because you have Zinchenko. If the ball is shifted out to him, you have Pereira who wants to step into that space there, and obviously that makes sense. But what happened was that there were a few occasions where Pereira wasn't getting out quick enough. At times we saw Rashford kind of drop off a bit deeper, and then even with Rashford not dropping off and Pereira not shifting over, they could have Young step to Zinchenko and have Darmian push out to Sterling, and that was something that we did see occasionally, but that was the flank that they did struggle in, and we'll get to that in a bit. But that's because of the movement of Zinchenko, because City want him to tuck in centrally with the ball, but City weren't monopolizing it enough, so his role out in a wider area didn't really make sense, and we'll get to that later as well. So what would end up happening there is that if the ball shifted over, they wanted Pereira in that space. But for the most part, sometimes Pereira wasn't getting over, and Zinchenko did play a key role down that flank. There were times when he did drop off because, like I said, if Rashford is pressing, they kind of wanted Lindelof to block off the passes to Fernandinho, but then you'd see Pereira step forward. So with that being said, you have Pereira stepping forward, you have Pogba pushing out wide, you have Then you have Lindelof, who could step forward as well to sit to Gundogan. And in this space here, you have Fred, who should be on David Silva. And that was kind of how Manchester United went about their business without the ball. In the wider areas, Aguero did struggle to kind of really be involved in the first half, but he was linking play and he did get into some key areas. Out wide, Raheem Sterling against Ashley Young. That battle kind of suited Young because Sterling would always look to run at him, and Ashley Young is a competent 1v1 defender for all the slack that he has been getting this season. And on the opposite side, Bernardo Silva was looking to tuck in, and Luke Shaw tracked that run as well. But with Kyle Walker not really looking to bomb forward in that opening period, United were fine down that flank. But even when we look at Sterling, there were times where, like I said, Darmian and Young would buckle up and double up on him. You would have sometimes Fred or Pereira shifting over to offer some protection, and Sterling struggled to really make an impact. He did get some a few brief opportunities, and we'll get to that in a bit, but that was kind of how Manchester United approached Manchester City from a defensive aspect. But that was how United approached the game going forward. That was how they looked to try and stifle Manchester City. So now let's get to City, see how they experience Manchester United's shape and pressing, and how they were able to create chances in the final third. Manchester City, on the other hand, looked to press from the front, and their pressing was cohesive. They looked to close down with their front three, stepping to Manchester United's front three. They had David Silva stepping to Fred. They pushed the fullbacks higher to close down the wing-back options, and then Fernandinho and Gundogan marked Pogba and Pereira tightly, and United struggled to create chances there. And when we look at how they were looking to close them down, obviously they weren't always being able to dispossess them in those key areas, but it ensured that they got the ball back quickly. City, they did control possession when the opening 10 to 15 minutes. They did look a bit nervy, like I said, struggling to really gain control of the game, misplacing passes, and that kind of affected the way that they looked to approach it, because when you look at it, you have Bernardo, you have Raheem Sterling out in the wider areas, Silva floating. But the key man that they tried to get involved here once again was Zinchenko, tucking into that half space to get on the ball. But if they don't have enough ball dominance throughout the game, then he somewhat becomes a bit of a liability, because that's his main purpose there. He's not a natural left back, and his positioning could cause him into some errors, and that is one of the reasons why he did get booked. There was a sequence where he stepped into Ashley Young and made a poor tackle before tracking back, and once again I think he fouled Pereira, so that was a key issue for Zinchenko. But when we break down Manchester City's, the way that they were able to bypass Manchester United, there were three elements to it. One, David Silva being able to find space in behind Fred. Two, Zinchenko was the main outlet. Coincidentally, they finally got going, and he was the main outlet to break United's press based off the fact that Rashford and Lingard were stepping to the center backs. Pogba was doing a good job on the left side, like I said. When Zinchenko tucked in, Pereira did step to him, and Fernandinho, they try to get Lingard to block off that space there for him. And then with Gundogan, if he was the free man, like I said, Lindelof was pushing forward, and Ashley Young did a decent job against Raheem Sterling. But the way that City were able to bypass was that they were getting quick balls out to Zinchenko, so that's the other element. And the first element that we will break down is the fact that they were able to win the ball and dispossess Manchester United players in their zone and break on the counterattack. Two examples come to mind. One is where we see Silva step to Fred, and you have Gundogan who is looking... You have Bernardo who was looking to close Shaw just around him, and Gundogan stepping forward. And when Silva pokes it away from him, Gundogan pokes it out to the man in Gundogan who steps forward. And Gundogan looks to play the ball around Lindelof for David Silva, breaking into left half space. Shaw looks to retreat, and Silva pulls it back for Bernardo Silva, and he forces De Gea into a key save. Shortly after that, towards the end of the half, you have Paul Pogba stepping forward, trying to break in midfield, and you have Bernardo Silva tracking well to dispossess him. The ball falls to Gundogan again. This time we see Fred step forward. But once Fred steps to the ball, that takes him out of the game, and David Silva's able to get into some space in that left channel. Gundogan finds him. He breaks forward. Fred tries to recover, and again, he plays the ball around Fred to Aguero at the edge of the box, but when he cuts in, he lashes his shot wide of the net. But as you can see in those examples, City winning the ball in United's half due to their press, and then David Silva being able to find space behind Fred to make the difference. Then we get to Zinchenko, and like I said, Paul Pogba was doing a good job stepping to Kyle Walker whenever he had to. On the opposite flank, Zinchenko was able to get forward on a few occasions because Rashford wasn't tracking back or Pereira wasn't getting across, and there were two instances where we did see him get forward. The first one, both of them actually stemming from Laporte passing it to him, and Laporte passes it to him. Pereira doesn't step forward. This time we see Young step, and we see Darmian push more to Sterling. But as that happens, Zinchenko is able to play the pass in between Pereira and Young for Silva running off Fred. And when he gets the ball, he plays it into Raheem Sterling, who cuts across Darmian and across Fred, and his shot pass hits off Smalling and falls into the path of De Gea. But that alone goes to show how they were able to get past United's pressing, past United's shape, because they were having issues in the first half. As Zinchenko getting forward and finding that pass was key. Shortly after that, towards the end of the half, we see City's best chance, and it also stems from that same avenue. This time we see Lingard and we see Rashford press the center backs, and we saw Pogba get to Walker. But now they have the free avenue in Zinchenko because Pereira doesn't step to him, and you have Raheem Sterling keeping Ashley Young tight on that right-hand side. So what happens is that Zinchenko is able to push forward, and as Zinchenko pushes forward, you see Pereira slowly get out to him, and again, he finds David Silva ahead of Fred to the right, and he lets the ball roll across him. And when he lets the ball roll across him, what ends up happening is that he lays it off to Gundogan breaking forward, who pokes it into Aguero, who's holding off Smalling. Silva gets it back, and it becomes quick, intricate play, because when the ball goes back to Aguero, it ends up falling to Raheem Sterling, who made the run across Ashley Young, and he's able to skip past Fred, Darmian, and Smalling, but he fires a tame effort on goal. But that was Manchester City in a nutshell. Started very slow. United's shape was positive, but they were able to find outlets through Silva, through their pressing that forced United into mistakes, and United weren't doing a good job of closing down Zinchenko. However, City were unable to score. So now let's get to the second half, see why Leroy Sane's introduction was pivotal, and what issues Manchester United faced when he came on. So when we break down how Manchester City were able to kill off the game in the second half, we have to look to Pep Guardiola's tactical change, where he was forced to take off Fernandinho and bring on Leroy Sane. This did see Sane move to the left, Raheem Sterling move to the right, and Bernardo Silva did drop off deeper in midfield. And what we ended up seeing there was a difference in the way City were attacking down the flanks. Now you had Sterling, who could go 1v1 against Luke Shaw. You had Bernardo Silva offering a more creative threat from a deeper position with Gundogan towards him on the left-hand side. And what we had from Leroy Sane was very pivotal, because what you end up seeing here now, as opposed to running at Ashley Young, he positioned himself between Darmian, between Young, and what he tried to do was break in behind Young whenever he could. And that was a big problem, because now Young didn't have a runner running at him. He had one running in behind him, and he needed help from Darmian to tuck in to make that difference there. And we saw that in the earlier stages. Well, initially as he came on, because that's when City started to hit a new gear. That is because City's attack in the first half lacked a bit of direct play, a bit of verve, someone who could make that forward run in behind, and Leroy Sane offered that. And what we also saw with Sane playing in that left-sided role was now David Silva was dropping off into the space that was vacant because Sane was pegging them back, and we saw Aguero also move into that space as well. And within the opening seconds of Sane being on, we saw David Silva drop off into that space and instantly locate Sane, making the run off Young to pick up the ball in that space. Shortly after that, it's Gundogan from a deeper position ahead of Pereira, ahead of Lingard, clipping the ball into David Silva in the box alone, and Smalling steps to him, but we see Leroy Sane between those two markers, Ashley Young and Darmian, darting in behind to get the layoff, and as he pulled the ball back across the box, it was Lindelof who cleared his lines there. That was one element of what Leroy Sane could offer you there, and that was mainly what he brought to the table that was different than Raheem Sterling, who made it easy for Ashley Young as he constantly picked up the ball from deeper positions and tried to go 1v1 with the defender. However, when we look to the build-up to Manchester City's goal, again, it just shows the breakdowns that Manchester United were having. It stems with the ball being played back to Kyle Walker, and Pogba does step to him. We have Gundogan in behind the two center forwards, and what happens here is that Bernardo Silva eventually drifts into the space to the left of Fred, because once Walker gets the ball, he plays it to Gundogan and Fred steps to him. Now you have Pogba and Fred occupied. You have Raheem Sterling making a darting run to drag out Lindelof and Shaw, and Gundogan can play the ball into Bernardo, who's able to run at Shaw, instantly cut to his left-hand side, and he beats De Gea at the near post, who should save it. And there you have it. That's how Manchester City are easily able to bypass Manchester United's press. Shortly after that, we see a good example of what Leroy Sané's introduction did bring to City's attack. Again, we see the ball shifted out to Zinchenko, and again, no one closes him down. But we see Aguero drop off and drag out Darmian to the left channel, and we see the ball played in between Darmian and in between Pereira for Silva, who again is ahead of Fred, and he slides the ball out to Aguero out in the wide zone, and he runs at Ashley Young before playing the ball into Sané ahead of the two center backs, and he lays it off to Silva, still darting into that space beyond Fred, and he lays it off to Aguero, and no one tracks his run, and Aguero hits the post. But just like that, again through Zinchenko, we see the movement of Silva and Aguero, and we see Sané offering a direct threat because Aguero's moving out of that position, and that's something we didn't see in the first half as well. And then we get to the second goal, and the second goal sums it up. Just off the counter attack, a poor Fred pass, and it's Raheem Sterling from a deeper position picking up the ball, skipping past Fred, and then skipping past Lindelof. And once he skips past Lindelof, you have Darmian and you have Smalling there, but Aguero makes an intelligent diagonal run to drag them out of position, and it's Leroy Sané breaking on the counterattack with his speed and behind Ashley Young, and Sterling slides it out to him, and he's able to fire his effort past the keeper. But just like that, within a 10 to 15 minute span, Leroy Sané's introduction shifted Manchester City's attack more direct, created space for Sterling, and the factor that they could have Aguero and Silva move out of position, and Bernardo was exceptional with the work rate to help Gundogan in the center of the pitch. After that, they dropped into two deep banks of four with Silva near Aguero, and they were able to close out the game despite Solskjaer looking to Alexis Sanchez, looking to Lukaku and Martial, but that didn't make a difference. But let me know what you guys think. Can Manchester United finish in the top four? Are their dreams killed? And what about Manchester City? Are they now set to win their second consecutive Premier League title? Meet me in the comments below. Don't forget I upload videos every day, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And that was your daily dose of the interviews.